Hello and welcome to another episode of The Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week are Daniel Jones and Jeremy Brown. Say hello, fellas.
Hello, fellas.
Man, you both said that at the same time. I love it.
It was close.
I said it more enthusiastically.
I think Daniel finished before I did. That's what she said.
Oh. But, yeah, this is episode 60 of The Best Games Period. 60 episodes. We did it. I don't know why that seems like a big deal to me, but 60 episodes.
I think now it could be at, like, the second level of AARP. I'm not sure.
How are you fellas doing? It's been a while since all three of us were together, reunited as one.
Reunited and it
feels so good.
I'm good. I'm good. I got to play a Nintendo Switch this weekend.
Oh, yeah?
Sweet.
Yeah. Easter's a good time to do that kind of stuff.
Did you get to play it, like, on the TV and in your hand? I mean...
Did you get to switch it up, in other words?
Damn you, Jack.
Oh, did I beat you to it?
I played generally on the handheld mode. I played Zelda the whole time.
Well, of course.
My brother-in-law brought it to Easter.
Not familiar with that game, but...
Real talk, Daniel, what else would you have played on it at this point?
Well, he had 1-2 Switch, and for a hot minute, I was like, well, maybe I could put 1-2 Switch on and see if Quinn enjoys this. But then there was a bokoblin, and then I found a shrine, and I quickly forgot about my daughter.
Yep.
Forgot I had one.
It's very Skyrim-ish in that way.
Yeah. I played it in the handheld mode just a little bit. Honestly, probably only played 45 minutes or so.
But didn't you play some a couple weekends ago on the Wii U?
Yeah, because I had already played the first 3 hours. So I just wanted to see how the system felt in my hands, you know?
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's neat. I like it.
Did you prefer the Switch version over the Wii U version?
You can't really tell the difference, to be honest.
Okay.
Especially on the
Switch
gamepad thing, I suppose.
Yeah, the Switch controller is better than the Wii U controller, because that Wii U controller is just junk. The regular one with the screen and everything. Ugh.
Coming out swinging.
Oh, it's awful. But anyway, yeah, I just liked it. It's a nice big screen. The screen's not like as good a quality as the Vita, would you say, Jeremy? But it's bigger.
Well, it's bigger. I mean, technically it's the same quality as far as...
No, but it just doesn't seem as crisp.
Well, that's because the Vita's smaller. I mean, exactly. But they're both still 720p. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
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 I would agree with that.
But it's nice. And then, at the end, I did switch it to the TV just to see it.
Yeah.
You know? And it's really cool. I mean, it wasn't perfect magic. It wasn't like, oop, you know, I didn't drop it in there and boom, came up on the TV. We had to go, where's the remote control? Great, all right, which button do I hit?
It's a smoother transition.
It wasn't my TV, so I don't know how to operate it as well as my own TV, so...
It's a smoother transition going from the TV to handheld than it is going from handheld to TV.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. Interesting.
But it was cool.
Yeah.
It was real cool.
But neither one are, like, crazy. Like, it still works pretty well, especially if you know what you're doing.
No, yeah. If I had already had it on the right setting, you know, on the right HDMI output,
it would have been
it
like
would
a
have
couple
been
seconds
instantaneous.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeremy? What have you been up to?
No comment.
All right, fair enough. I've been pretty busy the last few days doing my last minute taxes and playing Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is the game we are going to be talking about this week. And I guess the only other thing I would shout out or I watched through an anime series called Erased. It was really, really good. It's basically a murder mystery that involves time travel. This guy comes home one day and finds his mom is murdered, and he is able to travel back in time to when he was a kid. And he's in a kid's body, but he has the mind of a 29-year-old, and he's trying to figure out, who's behind this string of murders.
Jack, are you trying to explain an anime?
I'm just saying, it was surprisingly grounded other than the time travel aspect. I thoroughly enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. It's all about friendship and solving murders, and what more could you want from a television show, really?
Give me 13 reasons why it's so good.
Anyway, moving on. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. Speaking of death, Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons.
Wait, before we get into that, we need to
Spoilers.
talk about... Well, no. Well, yeah. Okay. This game is very story intensive, so yeah, we will spoil it. So be warned. Don't listen to this episode if you haven't played Brothers, because I think we can all probably agree that you should go play Brothers. It's pretty cheap and awesome, and the story's great. So then after you do that, come back and listen to this episode.
I prefer the word
before you do that...
Yeah, there you go.
Cheap,
Also,
cheap makes it sound like it should be like on the Oya or something.
Sorry, inexpensive. But before we get into Brothers, last week Jack and I discussed one of my favorite games of all time, Devil May Cry, and it would appear that I am on an island almost by myself, because Devil May Cry was not voted a best game, period, by our fans.
What?
Listeners, not fans. We don't have fans.
You mean I was right?
Fan. Listener. Generous listeners. Yeah, according to everybody else, you were right. It was pretty badly beaten in both polls, Twitter and Facebook.
Well, but to be fair to your side of the argument, friend of the show, Eric Scott, who was on our Resident Evil 4 episode, you can go listen to that, did agree with you. So you did have you had some allies in your corner.
I did. This is true. So.
It didn't. I mean, when I looked at the poll, at least on Twitter, it was like 2-1. It wasn't completely lopsided. Did you guys talk about the other polls that we haven't discussed on last week's show?
I don't think we did.
Because we got lots of polls out there, so check them out.
Check out our polls.
I'm just saying that we're like 4 behind.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if we're 4 behind, because I don't think
3 behind.
We did any for the honorable mentions.
I thought we did mention these. Final Fantasy IX got voted in. Mass Effect.
When would you have mentioned them?
I don't remember. On the demo. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
we didn't.
Oh, we cut that, didn't we? We cut it.
Basically, we're going to be doing a lot better at talking about our polls on the show. That's what we're getting from this.
We should get better at talking about polls. But that's why I'm doing that at the beginning of the episode. All right, so Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons.
I just played through it today. It only took me like 3 hours.
Yeah, no, it's not a long game.
Yeah,
it's not long.
I was actually kind of shocked that I was able to finish it. Actually, sorry, it took me less than 2 hours to play through this game. It took me 105 minutes.
Wow.
Okay, well, you don't need to apologize for that, Jack.
You also don't need to gloat.
I'm not. I just looked at my playtime real quick, and yeah.
So you got the controls down really fast, then, obviously.
It took a little bit. It did take a little bit. So one of the things that makes Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons really unique is that it's basically a twin-stick adventure puzzle game, where each of the control sticks controls a different brother. And that gets really mind-bending really fast, even for really simple puzzles. And I think it's also something that presented, like, both one of the most unique things about Brothers and also the thing that tripped up a lot of people about Brothers. Especially, we're talking, like, 2013, so 4 years ago. People probably less well adjusted to a radical control scheme shift like that than they might be today.
Yeah, I remember back in 2013 that being kind of a big deal among not necessarily reviewers, but people that played the game. Either they got it and loved it, or they just couldn't quite get the hang of it and were like, whatever. Like, they didn't hate it.
Yeah.
They were just like, that was $15, I guess.
So this is kind of me going out a little bit on a limb, but when a lot of people pick up a 3D game for the first time, there is a learning curve, like a pretty steep learning curve.
Right.
You go from, like, not being able to wrap your head around how to move a camera around or move or do both of those things at the same time to being able to do it pretty well. But it takes anywhere from a little bit of effort to a lot of effort to kind of overcome that hump.
Yep.
And I think Brothers presents a similar learning curve just because we almost never see games like this.
Yeah.
And it requires you to be able to split your attention in two and be able to keep track of which brother is being controlled by which control stick. And that can be difficult. But I guess I kind of looked at it as being part of the puzzles. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like, that's
it requires you to kind of independently move both thumbs. Because the tendency
you have to literally
is to, like,
separate your brain and use both sides simultaneously,
yeah, exactly.
which isn't natural for most of us.
No.
So that's really the challenge of the game, honestly.
If you've ever played the kind of crappy early PlayStation 4 indie game Entwined, and then you kind of have an idea of how frustrating it can be to have to operate both thumbs independently of each other, because that game made you do that, and sometimes it was absolutely maddening. And it wasn't fun, and it was really frustrating. But Brothers presents it in a way that it works. That they give you room to learn the control scheme and get comfortable with it. And it doesn't really punish you. It's not a challenging game. But learning how to control the brothers is a little bit challenging.
What's interesting to me about not necessarily this game, but that whole mindset of using, your opposable thumbs to do opposable actions. Like, we do that with every game that we play.
Oh, yeah.
Except most games have this set of rules when it comes to that.
Right.
And it's not even so much up or down, left and right. Like, it's, because some games are inverted and some games are not. But this one, like, just blows those rules completely out of the water, and it makes you pretty much do the same thing except the exact opposite. And you really have to think about it. You're like, it's almost like wax on, wax off, except you have to constantly do it, and that's, for whatever reason, it's a struggle. It was to me until I got the hang of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you are exactly right on with the fact that a lot of games require you to do the same thing. In a lot of games, you're moving the right and left joystick independently of each other to do different things. But because so many games follow the same set of rules, we get used to that. We understand it, and eventually it just kind of becomes what's natural. When
it's like the hard part is doing the exact same thing except the opposite.
Yeah.
Because if you have to control each thumbstick doing a different, gesture or movement, it just feels more natural. And maybe, like you said, it's because we've become used to that. But I don't remember even, and I've talked about this, when I first started playing 3D games, like, it made me sick to my stomach, and I was confused, and it was like, I was woozy, and the camera was all weird, but it wasn't the same as when I first played this. Like, this was just, like, what do I do now?
Because it's different.
Like, I know I should be able to do this. It's pretty simple. Like, the concept is so simple.
It's because you're literally moving two different things in different directions. Whereas, like, if you're playing Zelda, for example, like, I was watching my dad. I handed off the Switch to my dad to play this weekend, and he's not accustomed to 3D controls, so he's not used to having to control the camera with the right stick. And so I told him that's what you have to do, and he started to get it quicker than I thought he would. And I think the reason is because your attention is always focused in the same place. So you're moving Link to one direction, but then you're also still trying, typically, for the most part, you're still trying to center your camera on that same direction. So your attention for both thumbs is centered in that same place, whereas in Brothers, they completely split it. So one brother's moving forward while the other's got to be moving back or left and right and whatever. And it's different parts of the brain, and it's hard.
Yeah.
That's a funny example, because the only thing about Breath of the Wild controls that really make sense are the thumbsticks. The rest of them are kind of whack.
They are kind of whack. Like,
I mean,
can
you get used to it just like anything
they're
else.
Weird.
You can only remap like B and Y, which
that's weird.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
so weird.
But I think so. Just the general control scheme and wrapping your mind around that presents almost like the majority of the challenge that is in Brothers.
Yeah.
But underneath that, you're almost always doing something different, or at least if you're doing the same thing, it's being done in slightly different ways that make it more interesting. Or you're doing it in a new place. And it's just so tightly designed. Each area has a purpose and follows through on that. For example, and also the game never teaches you beyond, like, I think maybe 2 pop-ups early in the game.
Yeah.
That's all the tutorial you get. The rest is just you figuring it out with the minimal gestures and vocalizations of the 2 main characters. Naya and Nayi, I believe their names are.
Sure.
I think it's actually Nai and Naya.
I think Naya is the older one, and I'm just fairly certain of that because of the amount of times his name is screamed towards the end. Nayi is the younger one, and let me tell you,
we'll go with that.
Let me tell you, I went into Brothers thinking I knew what to expect. Like, I didn't read anything about this game. I was basically going in blind. I knew that it was kind of a twin-stick adventure game. And I started playing it last week and finished it today. It is dark. Like,
yeah.
It is way darker than I thought it was going to be.
Did you see the guy that was trying to hang himself?
Yeah, I saved him.
Okay.
I saved him.
Because you don't have to see that. You can go right past that.
Right off the bat, this game opens with darkness. It is a young child mourning at the grave of his mother, who he watched drown to death at sea. And you see the cutscene of that happen, and it is immediately sets the tone for what this game is kind of going for, because everything's like kind of beautiful and like well realized, but there is this undercurrent of like bad stuff is going on. Like, bad stuff just happens to people. This isn't like your idyllic little town where everything's fine. This is your idyllic little town where people are dicks sometimes, or people die, or get sick.
So I kind of want to go back to that beginning though, Jack, and you can continue on, and you guys can both answer this question. Like, a lot of games start out very tragically, right?
Right.
You know, where something happens. This game, like, somehow you felt it immediately, and I've never really been able to put my finger on that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do both of you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know Elmo from Elmy or whoever or whatever at this point. Like, they're just these 2 dudes, right? A lot of people's moms have died in video games. Like, that's kind of a trope in some regard.
Yeah, it's
when I
similar to like a Disney movie.
Yeah, but when I first played this game and maybe because Daniel, you and I had talked about it, and you told me, you gotta play this game, you gotta play this game, you gotta play this game.
Probably.
So I was expecting something, but
Maybe.
like immediately, like that opening, I was like, damn, like this is not gonna. It was almost like kind of like That Dragon Cancer. Like I just knew that this game was gonna have all the feels, and I don't want to say that because it's not on the same level, right? You know, it's not like real world. It's not.
I know what you mean, but I also think that this story in general serves as like a really abstract way to kind of get at that same kind of emotional pain.
But how did it do that?
Well,
separate to other games so quickly.
I think a lot of it has to do with a couple of things, which, as I think of that sentence that I just said, that isn't a really good way to say that. I think it comes down to like 2 or 3 things. First, I think that the visuals are just so perfectly executed and in keeping with itself. Like, it's just very consistent to the tone it's going for. So even when you look at kind of that first opening shot, the home that these 2 boys grew up in is on a cliff, and there's a grave there, and it's just the colors and the tone of everything is somber. Like, it's the kind of tone you get when you look at like old-timey photographs, I guess, and no one's smiling exactly.
See, but like Bloodborne starts out kind of like that. You're on a cliff in a graveyard, and it's very somber, and the tones are just kind of there, but you don't get that same emotional instant like that this game does.
Well,
that's what I'm curious about.
So then the other part of it is, so you have the visual, and then you have that soundtrack. And the soundtrack to this game is very good. Like, it's not something I would listen to as easy listening or like while I'm trying to work. Because it's kind of, at the same time, like folksy, but also unnerving. And kind of catches you off guard. And so it's something where it's like it's the sound makes you pay more attention to what's going on. And then the third thing is it actually lingers on this pain and like gives appropriate context to why it's happening.
But they can't let it linger at the beginning.
But they do. Like,
did you have to let it linger?
Well, but it opens.
Listen, Cranberry.
It opens.
If you want to add something valuable to this conversation, go ahead and speak up.
It opens with this kid crying at his mother's grave, and then it flashes back to how she died. So you understand not only like, oh, his mom's dead. You're essentially watching Mufasa's death. If we're making the Disney allegory, you're getting that context before it comes back to that moment and lets that sink in that this probably happened pretty recently and he's pretty sad about it.
That beginning not only is the emotionally powerful right from the jump, it sets up the character of the younger brother in that he saw his mom drown, and you almost get the sense that he wasn't really afraid of the water before, but he was afraid of it enough not to know how to swim. Without words. All of this is set up without words. And that's another really impressive thing.
That's a good point.
Brothers.
I guess maybe that's part of my question. Like, just...
Yeah. But like, that beginning sets up the tragedy of their mother's death, and that he was there when she died, and he was alone, and he couldn't swim, and she died because he feels... You can tell that he feels that it was his fault. And then that comes back around and makes the ending even more powerful and emotionally resonant.
Yeah, but I would also like to point out that part of what makes Brothers so great is that literally everything that you learn about these characters is reflected in the gameplay. So it establishes with that opening that he feels guilty about his mother's death because he either can't or can't swim or is afraid of the water. And then that's reflected throughout the game in that whenever you get to water, he's very clearly upset and scared, and he can't swim, and so he latches onto his brother's back, and his brother swims for the both of them. All this is set up without any English words. I don't know, like, if they're using a different language in this game.
No.
Or if it's just kind of a sing-songy, made-up language.
It's a made-up language.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you get enough from, like, their tone and their expressions and their gestures to know what they're talking about, like what they're trying to get at any given point throughout Brothers. Yeah, it's just so well thought out and put together and then executed. Like, there's just such consistency of ideas going throughout Brothers. I love it.
So I feel like we're kind of... Well, it was my fault because I asked the question, but we didn't really talk about, who developed this game and whatnot. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a whole bunch because I spent most of my time just playing
But
Brothers.
I think we should at least acknowledge them.
Yeah, I know it was Starbreeze.
Yep.
Starbreeze Studios.
Yes.
And
they
didn't they work together with a director?
Yes. The director of the game was actually Josef Fares, who's from Beirut, whose brother actually died when he was younger.
Okay.
His family was refugees, and I don't know the whole story, but somewhere along the line his brother passed away. So this game was born out of that sort of. I think it was Mike Mahardy from GameSpot, former Game Informer online alumni, who wrote a really good piece about Brothers on Polygon back in the day. So if you're interested, go check that out. It was about Josef Fares and his whole story. But he's a filmmaker, and he hooked up with the guys from Starbreeze and wanted to make a game and tell this story in an interactive way, because he just thought that it would be more effective if people had control over, if it was interactive, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what Brothers, that is what makes Brothers interesting. And we talk about like why the controls are so kind of frustrating and complicated to wrap your brain around, but there's a reason. The reason is so that you are connected physically to each brother individually.
Yeah, totally.
So,
well,
but yeah, Starbreeze is great.
Yeah, Starbucks is pretty great.
They got that unicorn frappuccino latte.
My apologies to Starbreeze. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, it's interesting.
It released multi-platform too. It wasn't exclusive
Correct.
to PS3, was it?
No, it was on 360 and PC, and now it's on PS4.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there's so much attention to detail in Brothers, in that, like, each brother can interact with a lot of different things, like more than just like what they can interact with in the puzzles. So, like, if you're going through town, you can like exchange pleasantries with a random townsperson, or you can skip rocks down at the ocean, or you can pick up a kid's ball, or
play with from hanging himself.
Yeah, there are a ton of different interactions that don't actually add to the main mission, which I don't think we've even talked about that. The whole point of Brothers is that these two brothers lost their mom, and now their dad is dying from some kind of illness or disease.
Yeah, and they're off to try to...
And the town healer gives them a map and is like, hey, you need to go on an adventure and get this thing to heal your dad. And it's not really 100% clear when he says that. You just kind of you don't know the details. You just know you're going on an adventure to help your dad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
It makes me feel like I should have another kid in case that happens to me.
I mean, just for safety.
Yeah.
Dylan has 2 thumbs.
I mean, I might have to have 2 more kids because Dylan's pretty old and they'd have to be within a few years of each other.
I
So,
thought you were going to say because Dylan's pretty dumb.
I wouldn't say that.
I definitely wouldn't say that. He listens to the show.
I'm just teasing. Dylan, have a marshmallow. Shut up.
Oh, God. That's going to cost me. Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to sidetrack there. But... I mean, if I was like on my deathbed, I'd want 2 people on my side, more than one, I suppose, like to find the cure.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd want a really good map maker also. Like,
Right?
I wouldn't want just some dude that couldn't even speak English. That sounded bad.
I don't think he's a map maker. I think he's a doctor. He just didn't have the right...
They couldn't even speak any known language to just be like, here you go.
let me tell you though, my favorite interaction in the game is you're running past, like, it's just like a little valley, a little dip in the landscape, and there are a bunch of black bunnies hopping around, and there's one albino bunny, and you can go pick up the little and like the black bunnies avoid the albino bunny because like he's an albino and he's different, but you can go and take the time to catch the bunny, and then you can dip it in like some campfire soot and make it a black bunny, and then like the other bunnies accept it and it starts dancing a little bit. That was so freaking adorable. I could not get over it. I was smiling so hard.
That's really cool.
I don't think I've ever figured that out or realized that. Yeah.
No, I really appreciated that part.
I think it's really cool that whole first hour or so is really just a big tutorial to let you get comfortable with the controls and play around. But you don't realize it because it also functions as just world building and showing off, developing the characters and developing that world that they inhabit.
So if the first hour is a tutorial, what is the second hour? The game?
See, I think there were 3 hours of that game. I don't know. Maybe it's the first half an hour. I spent a lot of time. Obviously, not enough time to dip the bunny in soot because I never realized that.
I played it for at least 4 hours and never finished, so there's that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I played for like 4 hours before I finished that game.
So here's the thing. Initially, I think I would have agreed with you that the first hour is like a tutorial, except the game continuously introduces new things for you to do. Even
I guess I just meant a
simple...
tutorial in like how to control those brothers.
Maybe, but I had problems with it all the way through. But like not... Okay. I think there are some people who took that it is hard to learn that kind of control scheme and thought that was kind of like a negative because they were struggling with it. I never felt like it was a particularly bad thing. I just thought it was a different thing. Like, you don't see people with that control scheme that often. Even
I bet you
twin stick shooters and stuff like that.
Well, because twin stick shooters are different. Like, you don't got to maneuver around valleys and canyons and whatnot. Like, I bet a lot of people gave up on the game right before they were about to get the hang of it. I kind of feel like that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing you just need to, like, I don't want to say push through.
You need to stick with it. You got to double stick with it.
You need to stick with it.
Twin stick with it.
Just think of the controls themselves as the puzzle, because the puzzles aren't that hard. They're basically just... every time you encounter a puzzle, there's either a blatantly obvious solution, or the camera is kind of hinting at you, like, what you're supposed to do. Like, for example... and again, remember, this game is pretty dark. Like, kind of the second third of the game, you're going through this valley that is full of the corpses of dead giants that have been in, like, fighting each other, and they're just bleeding all over the place. And one of the puzzles that you have to solve. There's a giant blocking your way. What do you do? Well, the camera kind of angles up, and there's like a big crossbow on a ridge, and so you climb up the ridge, and then the camera kind of shifts around and shows you that it happens to be aimed right at the giant that is blocking your path. And so then you have the two brothers pull the bowstring back and notch the arrow, and then the older brother can move the lever to fire it, and it knocks the giant out of your way. And, like, those aren't particularly hard things to do or figure out, but the little wrinkle is that you're controlling both the brothers at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is for the entire game, except that you're constantly doing new and different things. Like at one point, oh, you're stealing a key from an ogre, or oh, you're hiding from an invisible monster thing. Oh, you're fighting a giant spider lady. Like, there are all these different things that are interesting and new and kind of shake up what you've learned so far. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty comfortable evolution throughout the game of like what you can do with such a simple control scheme.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It is simple, but it does continue to challenge you. But once you get the hang of it, you understand what you're supposed to do, and it's not so much trial and error as it is focusing, if that makes any sense. Once you get the hang of it.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean, because you have to either... Like, I always kind of... There's like an internal sigh of relief whenever you kind of complete one task with one brother, and then you can focus on just one of them. Like, there's that kind of pull and tension throughout the entire game that kind of gives it its character. Like, try imagining playing this game with just one character. Is it anywhere near as interesting?
No.
Yeah.
It would be no.
Or even with one character being controlled by a computer.
Or like if you like stopped, like you're controlling both, but you have to control one at a time.
Yeah,
right.
Even if they both control the exact same, like if the twin sticks weren't the opposite, like if you even had to control one at a time the exact same, it wouldn't be the same. If up was up and for both characters on both sticks and left was left and right was right, it wouldn't be the same.
People often compare Brothers to like kind of a classic fairy tale, and that's pretty much exactly what it is, but it's just so solidly constructed and exciting and emotional that you're kind of just going through this. It might sound kind of cheesy or cliche, but it's like a tour de force. There's just this constant escalation of, what you're doing. Like, you start off, you're climbing through town in, like, back alleyways to get to the other end of town. And then pretty soon you're, like, climbing up a mountain's top after you flew a glider into a castle, and you're swinging on a rope with each other.
Are we talking about Zelda again?
I mean, it has that kind of adventurous feel to it, and the getting from point A to point B, where you're doing all that adventurous stuff, just feels natural.
A lot of people don't know this, but Uncharted 4 with Nate and Sam, that was based off of this game. It was just a couple brothers having an adventure.
I mean, if there's like one thing that kind of like sticks in my mind that like I've been rolling it over, like, why don't we see more games that are kind of like this? Is it just because that premise and control scheme just works so well for this particular idea and vision? Or is it because it takes a lot to help players kind of overcome that learning curve hump? But like I've never seen any other games like this other than maybe like I think there was like an obscure indie platformer called like Olimilo or something like that. Or
do you mean
Ilo Milo?
No, it's not
control
Ilo
scheme
Milo.
wise?
Yeah, there's a side-scrolling platformer that's kind of similar, where you're controlling two different characters with joysticks. And
I thought it's Elo Milo.
No, that is a game, but I think the game I'm thinking of is Ibn Ab.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was like two gibberish syllables. Sorry,
but yeah,
I
know what you mean. Like, I think probably the reason is just because, one, like, typically a lot of indie devs will try to just do something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, they're all trying to do something
like they're
different now.
copying it. And then, two, like, you're not going to see it much in AAA space because I think there's too much of a learning curve that I think a lot of AAA developers are afraid of.
Well, and plus a AAA budget demands a little more than what this game has to offer. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all.
Right.
I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. And you're right. Indie developers are just kind of trying to one-up each other now and just come up with different ideas, things that haven't been done.
Right.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked. I don't know how well this game sold across all platforms. I
think it sold pretty well.
They may have actually been better off making an exclusive on something. Like, that might have actually helped this game.
It sold 800,000 copies. So.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Right, there you go. Was there any section in particular that you didn't particularly like? Either of you?
Well, the end made me cry, if that makes any... if that counts.
We'll get to the end, because we have to talk about the end. But
yeah.
Before we do...
I think, not particularly.
Yeah.
This game just, whenever you might even possibly be getting a little bit dull or like kind of bored with it, it switches up the setting or like what you're doing. Like, you go from being in the sleepy peasant town to like this underground mine full of trolls.
Yeah.
And you're like going around on machinery and stuff like that. And then from there you go to like this rundown giant's castle. And then it goes to like this dead battlefield full of giants. Like, it's constantly throwing new stuff at you.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot in there for as short of a game as it is for most people. I mean, really, there's a lot of content. A lot of I don't know if content is the right word, but I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. A lot to take in.
Yeah.
I mean, it moves like that it was directed by a film director kind of shows in that it is constantly moving forward and doing new things. Like, it is
the settings and places change, have a lot of variety.
It is intending to take you on this journey, and like, you can get it done in 2 hours or 4 hours, but it is going to be constantly, as long as you're pushing forward, showing you new things. And again, that's just that cinematic sense of pacing and development, I think.
It's
the sequence with the invisible bear.
The what?
I never saw that part.
Oh,
come on! That was funny.
Oh,
invisible bear. Get it?
Yep. The sequence with the invisible bear was really cool. I particularly really liked that sequence. And the part where you... I just have to gush for a second. And the part where you set the bird free, it's fantastic.
Oh, gosh, that killed me. I can't handle stuff in games that shows, like, mistreated animals.
Oh, you need to play Last Guardian.
I know. That's part of the reason I've kind of been holding off on it, because I've been kind of not wanting to feel like crap, and I know that game is probably going to reduce me into like a sobbing pile of human. But you get so in the middle of this game, you get to this giant's tower, and like you're climbing up it, and this entire time you're hearing like these screeches or wails, and you finally get to the top, and you find that there is like this griffin in a cage, and it's like this sad. It doesn't even look like it's fully grown. It's just like a sad griffin creature, and you like set it free, and it is very clearly like abused. Like it's all bloody and tattered, and it like. But it's like friendly. It like lets you pet it and stuff, and then both the brothers get on it. It flies, cut to the next location, and then it dies. It dies. It just collapses on the ground and dies. It is.
Yeah. No,
I was so upset. I was so upset that you freed this creature. It was friendly. And then it just dies right in front of you. And that's kind of the theme of this game.
That's one of those. I wasn't expecting that moments.
Lots of things die. Spider ladies die.
That rips your heart out. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but the developers of The Last Guardian got a lot of inspiration from this game. Me, I shouldn't make light of that moment. It was a terrible moment.
I mean,
but really, The Last Guardian is that moment extrapolated out into a full game. That's not spoiling The Last Guardian. Don't read into that at all.
But I like even the spider lady encounter, because like after you're kind of going through this, you save this lady who's about to be sacrificed to these like. Kind of occult
guys who clearly actually knew what they were doing.
Yeah, basically. Except that they were very easily fooled by literally 2 children in less than a trench coat. And she
the kids next door.
She winds up being this like spider demon witch. And like Dark Souls style, and you have to have this boss fight with her, and it's a great boss fight.
Yeah.
As far as it goes in this game, but it's interesting in that it goes from it's not the kind of boss fight where you're just like, yeah, we conquered that boss. It's the kind of boss fight where you're like, man, I feel terrible for having done this, even though she's clearly evil. Because the boss fight is literally knocking over the spider boss who's trying to eat you and then ripping off her legs one by one until she's like literally like just hobbling around and clearly not a threat anymore. But you continue ripping her legs off. It's kind of horrifying and uncomfortable and sad. And then all of that uncomfortableness and sadness is stripped away because the older brother, Naya, gets stabbed through the chest by this last twitch of the spider demon.
Yeah.
And that kind of sets into motion all of the sadness that ensues.
So I've changed my mind. This game is not the plot of Brother Bear. It's a mashup of Brother Bear and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's the Hobbit. It's basically the end of this game is the Hobbit, or it's the end of Return of the King if when Frodo Baggins gets stabbed by Shelob, he dies and Samwise has to carry the ring.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that's
that would have been a much better ending to the Lord of the Rings.
You know,
but he has to
Tolkien
carry
had it
him.
to do over, maybe he would go that route.
I mean, Tolkien took a lot from Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
A lot of people don't know.
A lot of people don't know that,
don't know.
Jack, but it's true.
It's absolutely not true. Tolkien died decades ago.
If you actually have to say that, then shame on our listeners. A lot of people don't
Peter
know this,
Jackson
though,
did.
But George R.R. Martin is actually waiting for Brothers 2 to come out before
I thought he was waiting for Brother Bear 3.
The Song of Ice. Is there Brother Bear 2?
Probably.
Damn it.
Who knows?
Now I gotta watch Balto 2.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, there was a Brother Bear 2. It had Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly in it.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was real good.
No, that's Step Brothers.
Ow!
Step Brothers.
They were all... Really? Because they're really hairy in it.
I think I watched that one Talladega night. I'm not sure.
So the ending.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whew, I'm like not trying to be a tough guy here. I cried. Your brother gets stabbed, and the younger kid has to climb up the tree, and he's getting like this special sacred magic water,
Medicine,
kind of cure-all stuff. And this entire time you're climbing this tree alone, like the camera's constantly angling so that you can see like your brother's body. And each time it's obscured by the tree, and then you see it, he's looking like worse and worse, and then like you can clearly see he's kind of like falling over. And again, like I was saying at the beginning, this game just lingers on these moments, and it lets them sit. It's not cutting away to black. It sits on these uncomfortable moments and like basically forces you to feel things. So if feeling things isn't your jam, you're probably not going to like Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons.
Yeah.
And the kid gets down to the bottom with the magic water, and like the brother's dead. Like he's just dead.
It matters not.
And like they're at like the edge of the world. Like this is the middle of nowhere, and at that point you would kind of expect like a game would kind of cut away from that, or like 2 years later, like the kid makes it home, or like something like that.
Working on some farm, like has a little runt of his own, maybe a white rabbit. I mean,
or at the very least,
some coal burning in the stove, so he can turn that white rabbit black.
Man, you are really on this.
Or at the very least, the game would immediately jump to the youngest brother being in the room with the father giving him the medicine.
Yeah.
But Brothers doesn't do that.
Nope.
Instead, there is an entire heartrending sequence where the younger brother takes the time to dig a grave for the older brother, and is
they make you do.
Well, I don't think they make you dig the grave, but they make you carry the brother, like the older brother's body, as the younger brother is just sobbing uncontrollably, and carry the body into the grave, and then push the dirt into the grave over the older brother's body. And this moment is so strong because you've been playing the entire game as both of them.
Yeah.
So you lose part of yourself because you've invested into this game at that point. And
yeah. I was gonna make a joke about, do you know how hard it is to dig a grave and then carry a body into it? But I thought that would be a little bit shallow at this point.
A little shallow. I got that one.
I also, just for a split second, was just kind of like...
Considering that joke?
No, I wasn't considering the joke, but when I was playing the game, I was just like, I mean, and this is probably, I'm cold-hearted, but I was like, your dad's dying. You're going to take, like, dozens of hours to dig a grave with your bare hands?
Well, let's be honest, his dad's pretty much dead already, so...
Movies and games and everything always underestimate how much time it takes to dig a grave.
No, have you ever buried a pet? Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, digging a hole, like, even if you've buried a post, like, dug a post hole, it's not, like, just something you do. It
You're hitting rocks and...
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, anyway, he buries his brother. I'm, at this point, bawling my eyes out. And
it's not over.
And then the griffin comes back. I don't know if it's the same griffin. I don't know if it's a different griffin. I'm going to assume it's the same one because that makes me feel a little bit better.
Then let's go with that. I'm sure of it.
Well, and the griffin...
He probably he probably got some of that magic water from the tree in time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah, sure.
It's the same griffin. Peter Jackson even said so in one of the behind the scenes for Lord of the Rings, where he was talking about how that griffin coming back at the end of Brothers was really the inspiration for the eagles coming back at the end of Return of the King. So.
We really need to stop gaslighting our listeners with fake information.
Fake news.
People got There were some people who got really confused over our April Fool's Day
I
episode.
know, what the hell?
Good.
Seriously.
But
Yes. I guess we should Gandalf that topic.
so then the young brother flies back home on a griffin, and like epic music is playing. But I'm also very sad and also happy at the same time, and tears are streaming down my face. And then it gets to another sad part because the griffin is kind of a jerk and just lets the kid off surrounded by water. So he has to swim in order to get home, but he's afraid of swimming and he can't do it alone.
But he has to face his fears. But what the game makes you do is the game makes you control it just as though the big brother was actually there.
Yeah.
And it's so sad.
As somebody that hates water, like, and terrified of water, and my mom didn't drown or anything. Somebody might have at some point in my life. I don't know, because I hate water.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that about you. No wonder you never swam when I was out in Montana.
No, I'm pretty sure I told you then.
Yeah, you probably did. I just forgot.
Even in the boat. Remember, even in the boat? I was, like, terrified.
Oh, yeah.
I had on, like, 3 life jackets and was sitting right in the middle. Anyway.
Right, I do remember that now.
I am terrified of drowning. So, even though I actually didn't play the ending, watching somebody else play the ending, my God.
I mean,
Terrible.
it was terrible, but also at the same time, just like you're like happy for this kid because he finally like overcame this crippling fear he had. But also it's heartbreaking because the thing that gave him the strength to do this is the death of his brother. And literally you're going through each thing that you would have needed to do with your brother, and you're doing it alone as this kid.
But I bet he only swam that one time. I bet he didn't do it again.
I mean, I was kind of wondering about that too. Like, you never see him swim again. Maybe he just doesn't.
His dad was like, Nai. Let's go swimming. Let's go fishing. And now he's like, that. I went once.
Hike around the woods and look for sticks. Maybe try to find some griffins.
And I was kind of actually, with how the rest of this game had gone, I was kind of thinking maybe the dad would be dead too.
I'm glad he wasn't.
That didn't happen. Although I was kind of upset the dad didn't hug his son. The only thing you see the dad do after he gets better is collapse crying at the grave of his former wife and son.
So, here's my question.
Yeah.
Like, clearly this isn't like a big, booming metro area. Yeah. But there were other people in town that could have went on this quest.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too. Like, aren't there better people to send on this? Like a trained adventurer or like a knight or something?
Did you see the other people in the town? There was a drunkard and a old farmer and an old lady.
Hey, never underestimate drunkards. Have you not played Okami?
I mean, they do live in a world where there'd have to be some pretty capable people around if like
and maybe
a couple hours
up
away
on
there's
shit
like
just
an
in
army
case.
of giants.
I mean, they could have just asked the trolls to do it.
No, the trolls are too good-natured. The trolls were already in trouble and sad because the bad trolls had kidnapped the good troll, and that was
once they let the
moment.
good troll out, they could have just sent them on their way and said, "Here, just find this tree and bring us back some medicine."
Listen, trolls aside, there's got to be some sort of trade route going on here. Like, why would they not just, send a griffin with a note on its talon and be
to drop the ring into Mount Doom? I know, I know. Good questions.
I mean, they ought not do that. They just boys.
I mean, good points all around, but it kind of comes back to that whole fairy tale fable kind of thing.
It wouldn't be the same game if that was the case.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, part of me kind of wants to be like, young kids should play this game to learn about how life is going to roll them.
I mean... How young are we talking here, Jack?
I don't know, like 10.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, when Quinn's older, I want to play games like this with her.
I'd say
for
like
sure.
5, 6, it might be a little rough on him.
Yes.
Yeah, especially if you're like, hey, 2 brothers, I want each of you to play this game. Each of you gets one control,
Yes.
one half of the controller.
And whichever
One of you is going to die.
Yes, and only one of you will survive this.
This is a lesson about mortality, kids.
So,
Whew.
is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons a best game? Period.
Yes.
Why do you say
Okay,
yes?
for a few reasons. Like, and I'm going to get crap over this from some people. Yes, I change my criteria all the time.
That's fine.
Hey, it's a pretty short game, right? It's not a huge investment.
No.
Monetarily or time-wise. So it's worth trying out at a minimum. And if you just aren't smart enough to do left, right at the same time, then that's on you, I guess.
How do you walk? I don't know.
Yeah, right? But, like, this might be the only time I'm ever going to say this, but if you don't actually play this game, at least watch a playthrough of this game, an entire playthrough of this game. Because it is a very cinematic experience, and it's very touching.
I'll say that I get where you're coming from, but I would highly, highly encourage you to actually bother playing the game.
No
Me
doubt.
too.
Because that is 100% the way this was intended to be experienced. Like, no
without a
Let's
doubt.
Play
How
is going
dare
to
you, Jeremy?
adequately convey what it's like to play
I think
this
you
game.
could actually watch a playthrough of this game and then play it and still.
I
get
think
that
you
vibe.
could. Yeah, I
It's
think
one of those types of games.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the beginning of The Last of Us. Like, a lot of people saw the beginning of The Last of Us when Sarah gets killed, right?
Yeah.
And, like,
spoilers.
duh, we've already done The Last of Us, so I'm not gonna. And, like, it impacts them, but then when they play it, they're like, holy shit, I never realized it would be quite like that. And that's in the first 30 minutes of the game. This is like 3 hours of that. In a different way, absolutely in a different way. But the feels are nonstop. And maybe the control scheme makes you think about those things more, or maybe it actually takes away from it a little bit. I'm not entirely sure.
No, I think you had it right. Like, the control scheme amplifies all of the emotion and the
Because
connections
it's
you have
such
with those characters.
yes, because it's such a cooperative connection with yourself, but
Right.
with this other person on the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the final sequence of this game is like trying to do something that you have been doing for a long time with 2 hands, but now you're doing it with just 1 hand. Like,
I think we're just trying to make.
there's a sense of loss. Like, it's like you lost a limb.
I think we're trying to
Jer-
laugh in this episode because it's very sad. Like, if we don't-
Jeremy, you heard the joke in my head that I had in my head,
Yes,
right?
I knew exactly what you were thinking.
Okay.
You jerks.
That makes it even better. Sure. Anyway, for me, 2 Griffins up, totally.
I mean, I have to give it a yes just because I've never played anything like it. And it made me feel not just sad things, but like brave things and adventurous things and happy things. Like, it's taking you on a whole journey, and journeys often aren't just one thing, unless you're Limbo. But
Yeah,
this
it's not sad the entire time. It's not tragic
No.
the entire time.
no,
That's what makes the tragic parts that much more tragic.
Yeah.
exactly. It's not just one big valley. There are peaks and valleys, as our friend Daniel Jones is wont to say. But yeah, for me, I have to say, I've never played anything like that. Like, the one knock against it really is just that it's I haven't seen much impact in the industry, I guess, from Brothers. But
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's more of a lottery type of thing than an individual game. I mean, that's just pure luck, is what I'm saying.
yeah, I mean, part of it's pure luck. Part of it is like, I honestly think a lot of the reason you don't see as much as many games taking cues from Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, I think it is because of the control scheme. Like, it's definitely something that doesn't work with a lot of different games. Like, it works very specifically with this one particular game.
Well, that's true, but okay, fair enough.
I mean, I can't think of many other even co-op games or like AI
that aren't
type
like
games
that aren't
where this
like
would
top
work.
down, shooters type of things. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So I think it's a yes, just for how singular and how consistent it is in its vision of what it needs to be and what it sets out to do. So,
Yep.
initially two thumbs up, then one thumb up at the end.
Yeah.
I will also say yes. Yeah, I really can't think of many things that I don't like about Brothers.
No, you were totally all about this game back in the day.
Oh yeah, yes, I still am. I still think it's absolutely one of the best games. Period. The only thing that I can think of that I would put against it would maybe be just that the adventure goes through there's a lot of fluff almost, and it's a little bit it's a little bit like video gamey in that there's just tons of variety, and sometimes it starts to feel like the variety is just there just to provide variety and something to do, and it's not always pulling much narrative weight. And there are periods where the narrative doesn't move along at all for long stretches, and then finally you get close to the end and you meet the spider lady, and then things start to really happen. But otherwise, that doesn't bother me personally, because it's an adventure. It's like you guys said. It's like a It's like a tall tale. It's just a fun adventure for parts of it, and then a really
the best tall tales have a real life feel to them in their own way.
Yeah.
Like, of course, it's extravagant and ridiculous, but it feels like it's something that could happen in real life.
Yep. And Griffins. They're real.
I meant, your dad getting sick and having to go do something. Come on.
Yeah, totally. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, anybody who has a sibling or brother can relate to that. Even if you don't.
I was going to say, you don't even have to have
You can still relate to it,
I mean, I only have one Griffin, and I totally relate to it.
I will say, I think you're completely wrong about this game having fluff.
My Griffin is 100% cage-free. Just want to put that out there, in case Pete is listening.
Really?
I finished this game in under 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of filler, if that's what you meant by fluff.
Right. Also, I just came off playing through Mass Effect Andromeda, and that game is all about the fluff.
In comparison, yeah.
I
finished Horizon, by the way.
Because I'm all
Speaking
about
of fluff.
All about that fluff. No shepherd.
I don't know how much more they could have taken out of this game to have it be more focused.
No, you're right.
Well, if they hadn't,
that's why it's a very slight.
There would be less fluff.
That was actually the only part of the game where I got confused as to how to solve a puzzle. I thought you were supposed to put the sheep.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were supposed to put the sheep on the bridge to keep it down.
Yep,
and so
me too.
and I just kept setting more and more sheep on the bridge, and they kept all getting thrown off, and I was very upset. I figured that part out, though.
Yeah.
That was...
Yep.
So you're not even acknowledging my terrible jokes. I think it's time to end the show.
I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, sheep fluff, that's funny. Come on now.
How... Before we wrap up, we all voted yes, but I want to know how other people disagreed.
There's actually there's no really negative written reviews.
There's no negative user reviews? Those are the ones I care about. The voices of the people. This person gave it a 0.
All right, let's hear what this gentle person has to say.
This is from a certain user named Swagolf. From January 8th of 2006, so relatively recently.
From what?
January 8th of 2016. Oh. Sorry.
I was like, wow, this guy is,
It truly did. It really did influence the Hobbit movies.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Swagolf. The hype train took me, and oh god, was that awful. In fact, I don't really understand why this game have a good review. But some games that I don't like, I'm just like, okay, not my style, but it can be cool for some people, I guess. Here, can be cool for somebody who has never played a good game with a good story. The deep story? Please. There's just nothing. Nothing. Really. Please. There's game with real story, real depth, plenty of them. Do them, and never go back in Brothers: A Tale of Nope. Scene graphism are cool, but you don't know why this is at this place or that thing at another place. With this huge problem, this world seems empty and you just don't feel it at all. This way, graphism are useless. There is no artistic direction, artistic idea. This world hasn't here before you and will vanish without you. It has no meaning, no story, nothing. Like the game itself, in fact. Our heroes are just horrible. It's not the case if you don't talk to any PNJ. But if you interact with only one of them, you will hate your character for's the entire playthrough. Facial expression is absent, and for a game that wanted to be deep with empathy, ... it's really disturbing. Gameplay-wise, one word, there's just nothing.
Gameplay-wise is one entire word? Okay.
Yep. Oh, wait. Yes, there's something. One act, one idea, over and over and over again and again, and another act, and that's a loop of nothing. Please don't play this game. Never, ever play this game. Never. 3 out of 12 users found this helpful.
Well, thank you, Foreplay2690, or whatever your name was.
Swagolf.
Yeah. Jagoff.
Foreplay.
That was a 0 out of 10.
So, there's a couple things I want to point out about that. First of all, anybody that thinks opioid crisis is not a thing in America should read that review. 2, thank you, because he said please so much.
Oh.
we should read one more. There's a 1 rating.
Okay.
Oh, there's a couple of 1 ratings. Do you see the one from Okami
Okay.
Yazaki?
I don't want to say anything bad about Okami, so let's read the other one.
Okay. All right. Argotitan. February 6th, 2015.
I mean, I also like goats, so...
It says, Brothers is a game you want to like and love, but unfortunately it just doesn't carry the epic weight you expect it to. It looks nice, it sounds nice, and it feels nice, but the story is short, uncomplicated, and anticlimactic. Huh. Sounds like a review of Jeremy in bed.
I know.
If you're a 10-year-old
That's what she said.
who suffered from a family that fell apart and you're looking for a coping mechanism to help get over it, this would be a decent experience. But aside from that, it will leave you empty, vain, and asking for a whole lot more. The game's for free right now in the first half of February on Xbox 360's Games with Gold, so download it if you're curious about the hype, but definitely don't buy it.
Well, I mean,
Wow.
Are You a Goat Stalker was a little more... I mean, at least he was a little more articulate than Jackoff was.
Much more articulate. But...
Yeah. Not as in depth, though. I mean,
Also,
the other dude
I'm pretty
had
sure you don't have to
17
be a
paragraphs.
10-year-old who's...
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you don't have to be a 10-year-old who suffered from a family that fell apart and looking for a coping mechanism to enjoy.
You know, I've never understood that concept when people criticize video games of any sort. Like, I can't relate to this because it's a freaking video game. That's the whole point of it, right?
I can't relate to this because it's fiction and I
Yeah.
live in a non-fictional world.
But I love Metroid and Super Mario. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, good for you, dude.
Have you ever seen the movie Alien? That's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
It's so realistic.
Yeah. So, that was fun. We need to
Yeah.
do those
Yep.
more. Maybe plan ahead next time.
Maybe plan ahead so we have some reviews
Yeah.
picked out.
Yeah. But we should really hit up Reddit for those, because I bet you that's where... Or NeoGAF. Man, there's some good stuff there.
NeoGAF, sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that was episode 60 of the Best Games Period. Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, according to us, is a Best Games Period. I'll be putting out a poll this week on Twitter and Facebook. Check those out and let us know what you think of Brothers, Tale of Two Sons.
And thank you, Charles Dickens, for this classic.
Yes, of course. You can find this show every Monday on iTunes. Leave us a review if you would like. You can also find it on SoundCloud, Libsyn, our hosting site. We post it on Game Informer and community.extra-life.org. Jack?
Daniel?
Extra Life is so much more than just the place where we post these shows. What else is Extra Life?
Well, it's a pretty awesome charity where basically you get to play video games or just like a tabletop game or a board game or an outdoor game and raise money for sick and injured kids in Children's Miracle Network hospitals all across the United States and Canada. And everyone who signs up gets to actually choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital they want their money to go towards supporting, and 100% of everything they raise goes directly to that hospital. It's pretty amazing. You can learn more over on extra-life.org, or you can visit community.extra-life.org to kind of get more involved in maybe someone in your local Extra Life guild, or just read interesting things about video games or tabletop games over on the Community Hub. You can even find this very podcast. It's pretty happening place, full of fun and very generous and lovely people. So head over there, say hi, make new friends, support kids, save lives. It's all good.
I forgot to tell you guys something
Yeah?
on the show. So this week, like I said, it's been kind of a crazy, weird week. But I've been checking my emails frequently, like I often do, because my phone won't shut up until I do. I've gotten like 3 or 4 emails from like patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. There's like content from our show on Patreon. Did you guys know that?
I did. I put it there.
So, like, I mean, that's awesome. Like, if you want to get that content, you should check out our Patreon.
This is
Totally
true.
should. You totally should.
You should support us on Patreon, patreon.com/bestgamesperiod. You can also, if you do that, if you just throw us $1 a month, $1 a month, you can feed a starving podcast host. And
Could you for $1, honestly? Let's be real here.
listen, dollar menus go a long way.
If enough of you did it, then you could feed one of us, for sure. But $1 a month
Yeah.
is not going to feed Daniel, I promise you.
You'll also get extra content, such as What's on our Patreon, Jack?
I've been
You're taking
catching
this
up
too
'cause
far now, Daniel. The point was to be smooth in talking about our Patreon.
Yeah.
I know, but what's on our Patreon?
There's a couple honorable mentions and something else.
It's basically I just am catching up by posting our shows on Patreon as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And if more people sign up that meet our very extensive criteria of donating $1 a month, we will be putting up a lot of fun extra stuff. There's a lot of fun conversations we have that often get cut from our main show just because we want to keep it to a certain amount of time.
See, Daniel, I was trying to avoid that awkward moment where we just told people the same stuff they get on our Patreon is the same stuff they can get for free. But no, you had to go call Jack out and ruin it.
No, they get extra stuff.
They
They're
get
saying
extra
they'll
stuff.
get extra stuff.
They will,
Yeah.
but is there now?
Well,
There are a few extra things waiting in the wings for when people actually start supporting our Patreon.
that's right.
But from my point of view, it was cool just to see those emails come through because the only ones I've ever seen is like, hey, you've contributed to a creator, or hey, you need to put money in your account so you can contribute to this creator.
Because you're the only one.
Those are the only
one
emails I ever
supporting
get
us.
from Patreon. So seeing something on there that actually had content in it was neat. I liked that.
Yeah,
But-
that'll become a weekly thing once it's all caught up.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool.
All right.
Also, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/bestgamesperiod, as well as Twitter @bestgamesperiod. And I think that's everything. Thank you so much for listening to this show tonight.
Oh,
Jack.
I'm officially a celebrity. I now have 101 retweets. Or not retweets, but
Oh my goodness.
right?
Dang.
Wow, you could have a Dalmatian for every one of those.
I know, right? Like, I'm pretty much can retire now.
Well, I mean that is the next Disney film, 101 retweets
Yes.
for the modern age.
Yes, definitely.
Jack,
Daniel.
Jeremy,
Griffin.
thank you both for being here tonight, joining me on this grand adventure to save our father. And thank you, good listeners, for joining us as well for episode 60. We'll be back next week. Until next time, see you all on the Flippity Dippity. Oh, this is the best games period.
In case you
If you
forgot.
didn't know.